Hello and welcome to Two Blokes in a Cave, a vaguely philosophical podcast hosted by me, Carlton Sin, and joining me as always is Cameron Wright, the resident philosophical expert and Oxley's most eligible bachelor. Cameron, thanks for being here.
I'm glad to be here.
it's no worries. Mate, we're going to do Moore's puzzle today.
Yeah.
I'm going to let you introduce the sort of puzzle and take us through some of the initial thoughts. I'll be reading some of the comments, and apparently I talk a little bit more than 50%. So we're trying to balance out the talking to listening ratio. So take us away, mate. Moore's puzzle, what are we dealing with here?
So this is one of the things we've grabbed. G.E. Moore, philosopher. I think he's done a whole bunch of stuff. I didn't actually look into it very well, but I remember this guy from some university section. We'll just read out the little bit we've got here as a blurb, and then we'll continue from there. The idea is, suppose you're sitting in a windowless room. It begins to rain outside. You have not heard a weather report, so you don't know that it's raining, so you don't believe that it's raining. Thus, your friend, and he uses like a silly name here, but I'm going to use the name because don't get distracted. Thus, your friend McGillicuddy, who knows your situation, can truly say of you, it is raining, but Macintosh doesn't believe it is. In this scenario where Macintosh seems to be like a neat backstory to it, but anyway. But you, Macintosh, were to say the exact same thing to McGillicuddy, it's raining, but I don't believe it is. Your friend would rightly think that you'd lost your mind. Why then is the second sentence absurd? And as G.E. Moore put it, why is it absurd for me to say something true about myself? It's an interesting one.
It is kind of
Reading it back, it
interesting.
seems a little bit more complicated to display this exact scenario than it needs to be. But like, I get what it's saying.
Right. Okay. It is fairly fascinating. I suppose the question at its core is, why is McGillicuddy's statement questionable? And what's the other guy's name?
Macintosh. They're both Scottish or something in this scenario. I'm not
Macintosh
really sure.
Macintosh is outrageous for saying the same thing, but McGillicuddy is totally fine in saying it's raining. Is it because McGillicuddy knows it's raining? Is that the pretext that he
I think
is aware?
He's like seen it raining. He's like, he knows it's raining. He knows.
Okay, so he knows it's raining, and McGillicuddy is in a windowless room, like a cave, maybe somewhere where truth is perhaps obscured. It's a reference to the cave. Okay,
sorry.
Cameron's just coming in. I'm just really tired. This guy.
I'm in a hole here. Hang on. I'm actually in the cave.
Yes.
I'm like sitting there, and you're like, Cameron. Okay, you idiot. Yeah.
So I suppose the question, to some degree, like it does suppose that there is a truth that one cannot question and a truth that one can posit that is then extremely questionable. Is that a fair summary of Moore's puzzle?
Yeah, I think so. It's basically like your personal truth that you display when saying it about a situation that you know
nothing about.
Or you kind of know that.
Know. Like you can't. If you're in a windowless room and you haven't seen the weather report, you can't know if it's raining or not.
That's right. You're taking your friend McGillicuddy with a uselessly ridiculous name.
Yeah.
Here's a word for it, I guess.
Sorry if anyone's named McGillicuddy out there.
It sounds like a guy from a cop show from the 80s. McGillicuddy.
Those buddy cop movies.
100%.
Yeah, he's always the bad cop too, the old McGillicuddy.
He's the fat one.
The fat one.
That's what I imagine.
I just wonder then what this is analogous to. Is it a subtle dig at a subjective understanding of oneself compared with a more objective observation of the world?
Yeah, pretty much.
More in like if I come in from outside the cave and tell you that, hey, you're in a cave and these dancing shadows on the wall are in fact a reflection of the truth. They are not the truth. And then you tell me, actually, no, that is the truth. And you're out there dancing with sky fairies or something crazy. You are actually kind of crazy. Like there is something about, it is crazy for me, like for you to say to me that I'm wrong, but it's not crazy in the inverse for me to say, hey, actually, I think you might be a little bit, like you're veiled. There's a veil of ignorance here.
Yes, it's actually, I'm trying to get a grasp of it. It seems more complicated than
it seems kind of crazy.
Thought it was 20 minutes ago
when I read it, before the show, I was having a bit of a chat, and putting some notes down to what I think this is kind of referring to, because I think the basic elements of it are there is an objective truth that one cannot know, and therefore cannot make a comment about the objective truth, which is about the object, in this case, rain. You don't know about it. You can't know about it. So your comments about the weather outside have to be subjective. For instance, it could be January, and in Australia where we are, like that is a rainier month. I think in the northern parts of Australia, it rains a lot.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of like if you were there, you could make an inference. Your subjective understanding of weather and rain and geography where you are could infer that it's raining outside because it's the rainy season. I'm in this place that it should be raining, but you can't know objectively that it's raining.
Yeah, you're using some induction/deduction.
Yeah,
you're using some Sherlock stuff there.
But it's not. You are, the truth is unknown to you because you can't know it. And I suppose that there is. It almost seems like when I read the puzzle that Moore is. No, I don't want to say ridiculing. It's kind of a strong way of putting it, but he's kind of saying like you are crazy if you are making or seemingly trying to make objective comments or statements about things that you can't know. They become subjective and you're trying to pass them off as objective. Or maybe it's not subject, maybe you're just in the cave. Like, I don't know.
Well, in this case, you're in a windowless room. It's very cave-like.
It's cave adjacent.
It's a man-made cave, effectively. I'm assuming that it doesn't really say anything about it, but I'm assuming there's like one light in there. There's a chair at least, but it seems very cave-like. It's kind of like the cave, actually. Is this just a cave example with two men talking?
Actually, like the more I get into it, because it's basically, it is essentially me as McGillicuddy coming into you as Macintosh and saying it's raining, and you saying, no, I've seen the dancing shadows of the cave, the reflections of light, and I believe that to be the truth. And what you're telling me can't be the truth because it contradicts what I believe to be the case. And I think Moore is essentially saying, well, one of you is right, and it's the person that has the knowledge. The problem, I think, would then be like who decides who has the knowledge, or where does that come from? Because is that something one can infer generally, or is that one that happens on a case-by-case basis? I remember in our episode about the cave, I have this idea that perhaps you can be in several caves and perhaps you're enlightened in one, but you may find yourself deep in another cave where you may not be enlightened. And I wonder if that is something that Moore's puzzle is breaking down the enlightenment to specific situations, 1, 2, and 3.
This is a real specific situation about something to do with like objective truth about a fact that's occurring in the real world. The only thing is it doesn't like really say that your mate knows it's raining. That's the only thing that I'm like missing, because it says you're in a windowless room, it is raining. Like that's the fact. Like you don't know, but it is. But it doesn't say like your friend is in the room or he knows anything. That's the only thing that was confusing me, I think. Because like, you just assume that he knows it's raining? Yeah, okay. And he's telling you? Because if you read it back, it doesn't really tell you that anyone knows it's raining. That means they're just kind of talking garbage.
So you have heard, you're in a windowless room. It begins to rain outside. So that's the object.
Yeah, so it is raining.
It's raining, right?
It is to be the case.
So the object is there. Okay. But you have not heard the weather report, and you don't know that it's raining. So you don't believe that it's raining. Thus, your friend McGillicuddy, who knows your situation, that is, that he knows you're in a windowless room and you haven't seen the weather report, can say truly of you, it's raining. I don't know why he can say truly of you, it's raining.
Yeah, it's a funny word.
Wait, why does he?
So we were having a bit of chat about this like yesterday and today about talking about these things. And like when I do get into these things of truth, I think I was talking a bit on the chat and I think I wasn't making a lot of sense to you guys at the time. But like this is vaguely, sometimes when I talk about these truth things, it does get a little bit semantic-y. Like he's using the word truly. It's really like, you got to really tell me exactly what this means, because like I'm starting to get into like
Yeah, right.
You know, where's McIntosh? Where's the
Okay.
other? Where's McGiddlecuddy? Is he just like on the phone? Is he chilling outside? Is he,
It's a little bit light of the exact details for McGillicuddy. Why don't we try and then maybe make an analogy of an analogy? Because I think this is a little bit clunky. Even just doing the first 5 minutes, I feel like
Analogously,
this is a kind of an outrageous.
Because actually, when I'm reading, it doesn't seem actually super problematic. Because you're just saying like
it is raining.
you're saying it is raining. It's like saying this is the state of affairs of life, and I know like this is something that's occurring. But then I say something, another sentence next to it, and like adjacently juxtaposition of those two things makes it sound ridiculous. But like those two things are still true. It's just because you put them together in a weird sentence. Like, it is raining, but I don't believe it is.
All right. Well, how about we do this then?
But he doesn't know it's raining. How does it make any sense?
Yeah. Okay. I'm hearing you. What if we did this? I've got an example on the fly that I think we can unpack a bit further. That's a bit neater and maybe easier to understand the gist of this. One can know an eternal truth exists. For instance, 2 + 3 = 5. You can know that is a true statement. Objectively, that is correct. If I were to tell you, Cameron, 2 + 3 = 5, and you said to me, no, I don't believe that, 2 + 3 = 4, that would be, I think, similar to what is happening here. There is one person whose experience of math, perhaps, is incorrect at the source, and that carries on throughout his experience. You know, when you're doing a math equation and like in high school, you could potentially get the answer wrong, but you've got the formula more or less right. You've just input it incorrectly and you can still get some marks for it. Imagine in the sequence of events, you're working out a long division math equation and your sequence is wrong up here, and you carry through the mistake all the way down. So your answer will be wrong, even though you're like, oh, you've kind of got it. You're on the right track. We can see what you're doing, but you've made a sequencing error. You can still get some marks.
Yeah, and then Goodwill Hunting, Matt Damon comes along and goes, you completely ruined it my
idiot.
whole life.
Yeah, I'm so much smarter than you. But imagine that is the case for a person.
Right.
And I mean, maybe this is even what Plato was referring to with non-philosophers raising children poorly. Because people grow up and they don't have the... they're not properly enlightened or formed. Their minds are not formed properly. So they can't come to the correct conclusion because they haven't got the right formation. If you have the wrong foundation, you can't build a steady building, right? So that's a general... the general analogy I'm positioning to you is there is an objectively true reality that exists and that some people can see it and interact with it truly and other people interact with it in a subjective manner because there's a sequencing error somewhere in their past that they carry through.
Yeah,
and that becomes their, like, I think, what's the modern sort of verbiage? It's like, it's my truth.
Yeah, the personal
that's
truth.
Cool. That's, you know, it's wrong. Like there is a sequence of events that happened, and we can see, for instance, like they say the eye and the sky don't lie. Like a camera can capture events, and then if you talk to people, they don't remember it correctly, and they have slightly different aspects that sit in their brain due to their kind of experiences in life journey that kind of cause them to focus on certain things. I think I might be a little bit off on my understanding of Moore's puzzle, but it essentially seems like an argument between subjectivity and objectivity. But it is a little clunky, and reading it back, it is a little bit difficult to grasp the exact analogy he's written. The puzzle, I suppose, because I'm a little bit confused with how this is. So if we look at it in a way that might be easier for us to unpack and then discuss as a objective truth, subjective truth, and maybe even like a political truth, though I am loath to use that term because it's almost oxymoronic. But what kind of truth does exist or can exist, and how can we interact with it, and how can we go about our life in a world with such large degrees of variance between peoples, cultures, actions, events, things like that.
I think that's a good idea because that's pretty much how I took the puzzle anyway. Even if it's not actually vaguely trying to say that, I took it as like you're making a statement about your personal experience and personal belief on next to a statement about like something that actually is the case and or may not be the case. And the thing about you said about the building blocks, I know what you mean. Like they used to say that in like maths and stuff, and like you do all the basic stuff, like building a brick wall. If you miss like one of the bricks, you didn't do like quadratic equations. When you like do something more like complicated, you don't have that like strength in the wall and it like kind of collapses. And you could use that analogy. That's interesting to people who like have not bad or incorrect, falsified viewpoints about certain things that carry them through their personality. But I was going to go back on the other thing as well. When I did. So what you're talking about with like stuff that's like 100% true, like objective truth, well, I think everyone goes to like mathematics. It's like 1 + 1 = 2.
It's an easy one.
Pretty much the thing. There are branches of philosophy where there are people out there who think that's not right, and I don't know how that goes.
That's the philosophy of lunacy. I forgot. Yeah, those nutcases.
Yeah, so people think 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2, and
that's
like
fair,
so.
fair, okay.
It's hard to really argue because if we don't agree on that, then
they will walk around and argue like nothing is real. You're like, oh, okay, good stuff. It's kind of. I feel like that. Like at that point in philosophical dialogue, there is like, what's the point of doing just about anything if you get to a position where not even 1 + 1 can be considered true?
Yeah,
we're just talking past it because at this point. Nothing is. What's the inverse of if nothing is true, everything is permitted?
Yeah, pretty much.
If everything's true, nothing is permitted. Like if everything that you do or see can be true, then you can't do or say anything because it could be then wrong or.
I know what you mean.
Some manner. So I'm not sure what the utility of engaging in some of and I admire a lot of Descartes, and I'm not sure if that's where you're.
It's partly where I probably was going to go.
Quite like Descartes, but I think unless we spend an hour going just into like maybe like in the future, depending on if you guys like this sort of stuff, going into like, hey, let's do a deep dive on Descartes, his philosophy, and maybe break it down a little bit, and then just chat about it. That might be an idea, as opposed to like, hey, let's do a first thought on a particular puzzle or some sort of idea, because I think that might be interesting. And that's a topic so large in and of itself, it might be worth diving into and discussing and having a good time. But for this purpose, and we're talking more about truth, and my like actual opinion is that there is a truth. His name is Jesus.
Okay.
But like you can know truth.
Yeah.
And you can know eternal truths that exist,
that
are there, that people... And I think one of the hallmarks of a truth that is eternal is that if all the math textbooks in the world were destroyed for 1,000 years, people could then pick up like 2 + 3 = 5. That's not like knowledge that is lost forever. People can relearn that very quickly, even if we took away like the ability for you to do math.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? We might not be doing calculus on day one, but we can pick up pretty quickly like, oh yeah, there are some things that we can quantify across time, culture, space. Like these things are real. So I mean, before we jump into the real breakdown between, I think I've got a few interesting points about. Yeah,
I will make a comment on that before we move on. Number one, we got to call Brendan because the call ended in our phone. Number two, you mentioned subscribers. I wanted to shout out to that as well. But I was going to say, that's a quote from like Ricky Gervais, isn't it? Like,
for sure. Yeah.
But isn't that's the thing you're talking about is the defense of why he's an atheist, where he says, if you were to go into a library and burn all the books, then there's like a religious section and there's a science math section. In 1,000 years, the science and math books would all be back in some way or form, maybe different symbols, but they'd all be doing the same thing. But like the religious books wouldn't return. Like,
he's wrong.
Be completely
about
different.
That. Like, he's dead wrong about that.
But like
there is, I guess, like I like Ricky Gervais. Things very. Like, I don't think he's a particularly deep thinker on theology.
He's not a theologian.
No, he's not. He's not a philosopher or like I said, he's funny. And like that is an objectively, that's probably not the right way. It's subjectively to me a pretty devout like Catholic, that is funny. It's not true. Like it's objectively not true because we have lost texts before and been rediscovered. We piece together things all the time from the like ancient sources. Like we lose Aristotle. We don't gain all of Aristotle. We infer certain things to fill out books because we only get partial copies. Like there's not a 100% complete record of all of Aristotle's works.
No, I think there's like actually like hardly any
It's
books.
very
to be
few.
honest.
Right?
Yeah.
I think it's 5.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Same with Plato.
But even then, it's like not all of the book survived perfectly. So there's like inferences when you read. You're like, oh yeah, probably a little bit of this. Like this is the essence of the story. We can probably get the idea of what is being said. And then it's, I think you can say even the ideas of Aristotle are not refound, but they're retooled by Aquinas and then Confucius, who by all accounts had no interaction with Aristotle, and I think it was a few hundred years before Aristotle, wrote similarly. The essence of the writings of Confucius are in many aspects similar, though a different cultural background. They're similar to Aristotle, and those are ideas that are captured. And what I think theology is ideas of the divine. We, like, as a quick aside, I think it's very, very interesting because I don't want to make it a theology thing, but the like Garden of Eden story that we all know as sort of Western Christian kind of countries, there is that exact same story in almost every other religion. Like the easiest example I always point to is like the Nordic, like the pagans in the north, where we're from, basically with the Pandora's box.
Oh yeah.
That's Greek actually. The one in the north is something else, but it's a similar thing where there's a girl who does a thing and releases upon the world all the knowledge of good and evil, and all the suffering and terrible things that happen. And that is like interesting to me that there can be stories that are essentially the same throughout time. And I would say that's probably because there is a God-shaped hole in the heart of man, and we are looking to get back there. Even though the stories take slightly different skins, they are the same story. The essence is exactly the same. So I disagree with Ricky Gervais because, again, I don't think it's a particularly deep line.
It's not like,
but it is funny.
Out.
Like it's funny. It's a funny
I think it's got a shred of something because there's a whole bunch of stuff that Aristotle said that is like patently garbage. Like, and so that stuff wouldn't come back. Like there is some stuff that everyone always says that is a little bit complete nonsense, and we just kind of like don't talk about that. So that stuff wouldn't come back. But if there's like a comment about the actual nature of being human and like the human condition, that will come back in some way or form if we are, in fact, still living the same way. Do you know what I mean? Because a lot of the books are sort of like comments on how to live and like what is the case and what is the nature of life and all this sort of stuff. And that would come back in some way, shape or form. But it's hard to say exactly what. And then...
Look, I suppose my final thought on that would be there is no science without religion. The idea of trying to... a lot of science is assuming that the world is understandable. And if you just removed all of that totally, and there's no base assumption that the world is to be or can be understood, I don't think that there is nearly the same scientific advancement.
Historically, I kind of agree.
I'm not sure about that. But I'm happy to bring in producer Brendos. Keen to get in.
A couple of things to say.
To jump in. Brendos, what do you got for us, mate?
First of all, I put up on the chat the story that I think you were thinking of. Is that correct?
Oh, cool. There you go. Thank you.
Try to pronounce that, by the way.
Pronounce
yeah.
it. I'm not going to do that.
It's anyone know how to pronounce Yggrasil?
I'll put it up on the screen.
That's wild. Very interesting. I'm terrible at pronunciations.
Yggdrasil?
Even just basic names, I'm pretty rubbish at.
Yeah.
You know what I mean, it took me 3.5 years to figure out Cameron was
Cameron.
Second of all, I've done a bit of digging while you guys were talking. I got something that might give a little bit of a different perspective. So it's the doctrine of two truths is a core belief of Buddhism.
Okay.
So the two truths are the conventional truth and the ultimate truth. Reality exists, according to this doctrine, on these two levels simultaneously. The conventional truth is the way we understand our everyday lives. This understanding is the stories we all agree upon about what things are and what is happening. Conventional truths are helpful but not accurate. They are generally agreed upon understandings, not what is really happening. So for an example, this is my car. So Honda would think, like Honda the company would think it's their car, the bank would say otherwise. So they're two conflicting conventional truths.
Interesting. Okay. Is that like
Pretty
sort of
much
like, are they opposing or are they just two ideas of truth? Because I thought it was going to be like sort of like some yin yang thing, but I think that kind of makes sense.
Well, yeah, I only saw this at the beginning, but my take on it is we use conventional truths to help us understand our surroundings. So a lot of it will be subjective to help us describe where we are. And then there is the ultimate truth, which is what we'd call reality, and that the truth exists simultaneously between each other. So you wouldn't say that the ultimate truth is reality, but somewhere floating in between. So I think that is the take from it.
I like that. Well, that's kind of like where we're going anyway, because I think we're going to go start talking about subjective versus objective.
Yeah,
And that's kind of like what that is in a little bit.
Is there a possibility in
think of-
where it's in between?
Sorry, what was that?
So is there the possibility of the reality living in between?
I don't know.
I'll leave you with it.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, my answer is no. I think Aquinas said something to the effect of there is, I think maybe it was the early 20th century, this idea that there was a scientific truth and a theological truth. But Aquinas, many hundreds of years ago, pointed out that that's incongruent with theology. It's not an either or situation. And I think that's one of those... again, not to get too far into the religious stuff, which one day we will go into more, because it is quite interesting, I find. But the idea that I can't think of a good explanation now, I'm going to just pretend that it's a theological truth and not a scientific truth. You know,
Right.
people say, oh, the Bible's not a science book. I'm like, okay, that doesn't mean anything, though. Because my math textbook isn't a science book, you know, or
Yeah, I
my
know
history
what you
books.
mean.
Like, it
Yeah.
doesn't mean anything. That's just a cop-out way of not answering the question. But I think proper Catholic formation would say that a truth has to be both literally true and like theologically true. It can't be true in one sense and false in the other. And I'm
Yeah,
not
it has
sure,
to be true in all
Yeah,
instances.
exactly.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I'm not sure if, because I mean, obviously, Brendos threw this at me on the fly, so I don't know I don't know Buddhism super well to comment on the two truth idea. The universal truth or the higher truth reality sounds to me like an objective truth, the through line that is, and then the second truth seems to be more subjective, but I don't know fully if there's more to it than that, and the difference between, like I said, it's not something that I know a lot about. I would be remiss to comment more seriously on that, but if those are in conflict and the way of passing that is to say that, oh, they're different types of truth, I would say that's poor theological reasoning or poor scientific reasoning. For instance, to say, hey, this is not true scientifically, but it might be true theologically, would be poor reasoning, period. And if you have, in your own way, are thinking of something and go, oh, well, it kind of, you know, makes sense in my head, but not my heart. Like that's not a very good way of reasoning through life and operating. There needs to be, what's the word to say? There needs to be sort of continuity between the head and the heart, the mind and the body, for things to be good and proper and rightly ordered. And if we start to pick and choose, like, hey, this really feels good in the moment, but it perhaps make me feel bad later, it can't be a good, because it will give you bad stuff later.
Right.
For instance, like, you know, I love having a beer with the boys, Cameron can attest to that. But having too many beers and getting sick is not a good thing. Like it's no longer good to say this activity is good. It's actually bad now because of the consequences. And there's many, many examples. I think that's just the most PG one that I can think of off the top of my head. So we'll leave it there. We'll jump into more of the subjective element, which I think is probably what that two truth is trying to do. It's like, to me, it just seems like fairly weak. Not like, I don't say weak. Like, it sounds like really harsh, but it's kind of like a cop out catch-all to say, hey man, it's the truth. Oh, that's actually the second truth. You know what I mean? As opposed to, hey, like, this is actually incorrect. We need to pack this properly and figure out why it's not making sense right now. And have we got something wrong in our order of sequence that makes it untrue? Or is the essence of the thing itself untrue? As opposed to just saying, oh, it's actually just a second truth and it's not a really big deal. Don't think about it. Let's just move on. Because I think if our goal is to understand the world around us and to understand life and the mysteries therein, we need to have continuity and logic that directs our reason and thinking to end up at the objective truth, which should be the goal. Like, we've talked at length one episode about the truth, and is it good to tell the truth, and is it okay to lie, and why we should not lie. And I'm very happy to admit that I think I converted Cameron into the tell the truth at all times camp, which is great, because I think it is so easy to lie, because it's a quick and easy fix, but it doesn't sort out the underlying issue. Like, you are building a house of cards, as it were, and eventually those lies come home and it destroys you. So tell the truth all the time, I guess, is the way to go. So objective truth. What is objective truth?
Well, you're kind of getting a little bit what, like, I think about when we talk about this, like, because there is, like, what I did a small amount of research. There's a lot of different theories, and people start talking about objective truth, personal truth, political truth, social truth, like what's something true to you in this instance. And it starts getting, you read them and people have theories, but it is very semantics bound. Like, when it says, like, this type of truth, it's not even really meaning truth. It's kind of just meaning what is the case that is effective, and an effective way to think in that situation. Not like an actual what is happening. Like, for example, like, this is a cup, but it's also just like a pile of atoms, but it's also ceramic. It's a cup, though, for me to use for drinking, whereas objective truth, I don't know what it is because I can't really perceive the cup. And then you start talking about socially, this is a cup with so-and-so's face on it, Abraham Lincoln, therefore there's some... It starts going into, like, hang on, what are we actually talking about? It's like kind of semantics. That's like where I think a little bit what's happening. When you're saying objective versus personal... it's interesting, this Buddhist example that Brennan gave, conventional truth versus ultimate truth, kind of rings vaguely okay with me in the fact that I see it as, like, let's just say there's an ultimate truth, and I'm going to use that to say that there's an ultimate way of how things are. Like, there is something, and it is the way it is. However, I don't know if, as a human being with, like, limited... and sort of fallible senses, I can actually obtain that in, like, this state. It's, like, unattainable. So that's, like, my first point. I don't think you can really get to the objective truth. It's kind of impossible. And I think that's kind of where this, postmodernism crap that everyone seems to hate now, but it seems to be the big thing that came in halfway through the 20th century, where the idea that something is objectively true sort of went to the wayside, and now everything is vaguely up to your own opinion and, like, what you think and what's personally true to you. It's kind of a weird thing. I don't know if you can get to objective truth, because I can't see, like, for example, I can't see all the rays of light. I can't see all the spectrums. There's, like, infrared, there's ultraviolet. I can't see it. We know that it's out there because someone's done a test and we've figured it out scientifically, but I can't see it. And if you were to leave me alone in a room, there's no way I could figure that out. It's, like, borderline impossible. I can't interact with it really with my sight. I can interact with it by getting burnt in the sun or getting hot by standing near the stove. But that way I can't really obtain the objective reality. And the conventional truth is kind of like what Brennan was talking about. It kind of just reminds me of another thing I was reading, like, what is societally true? Like, what's the zeitgeist? Like, we all agree this. Therefore, we're going to go and act and live our life accordingly. listen, like we don't know exactly what physically happening in the world or whatever. We're going to live randomly accordingly this way because we've all decided it, and that's kind of like conventionally true because we've all said this is common sense. What's up?
Yeah, Brendan wants to come in. So what
Yeah,
do
so
you got,
just
Brendan?
while you're speaking about it, I think I explained it not very well. I think rereading it, it is a bit of you can have two conventional truths existing simultaneously. So I was trying to say, is there a middle ground? It's not so much the middle ground, it's that there are two conventional truths existing simultaneously. So I could perceive my car being mine, but the bank could perceive my car being theirs because I'm paying finance for it. And the doctrine is saying that these two conventional truths can exist and be truthful simultaneously. There is also a ultimate truth, which I think is reality. So conventional truths, something can be true subjectively or conventionally to you, and it helps you understand your own reality. But you could have multiple conventional truths happening all around us, and they are equally as true as each other.
Fair enough. I kind of am on a bit of a train with what Carlton was saying, though. I'm not entirely sure if they can all be true, really. Like I understand that example, and I do know what you're saying. There are a whole bunch of things that can be true.
Like Brendan owing money on a car doesn't make it the bank's car.
Right.
They have security. I mean, this is probably a semantic thing because the bank doesn't own the car unless Brendan stops paying for the car, in which case it's no longer his. Like the ownership of the car is singular. It belongs to Brendan.
There is an answer. Like there is a
Do you know
owner
what I
of
mean?
the
Like
car.
there is an owner of the car.
Yeah.
The bank does not own the car.
Yeah.
But I do kind of see where the argument is. I just feel like it's a little bit of a cop out, and not knowing enough about it to make a.
You have to use another example in my head.
Yeah, like that would to me that would be like it's an easy way of saying, oh yeah, we all have, man, it's all about like what you think. I'm like, well, actually, it's not like it's not Honda's car. They sold it to you. There's a definitive point of demarcation where it was Honda's car, and it is no longer Honda's car, and Brendan used the bank to buy the car. But the bank doesn't own the car unless Brendan stops paying the bank. But in all of that, at the end of the day, Brendan has the keys and uses the car. It's his car.
Yeah, was it ownership's like 9/10
9/10
the law? Yeah.
But
we're trying to think of another example.
It's just the idea. I mean, I think maybe a better example potentially could be Cameron and I, dressed as we are right now, walk out of this impressively lit cave, jump in the car, go down to 7-Eleven, get in a car crash.
Yeah.
Right?
If I got out of this metaphorical cave, I'm sure the first thing I'd do would be go to 7-Eleven and get a slushie. Let's go.
$1
We could do anything. What could you do? See the ultimate
wouldn't
truth?
you?
Get
Bit of
lost.
sugar-
I got
bit of
dollar
sugar.
slushies going down.
We get in a car accident,
Yeah.
right? And Brendan, our buddy producer, he gets a call
Yeah.
and he gets asked, hey, we've got two bodies here. We're trying to identify them. Are they Cameron and Carlton? What colour shirts were they wearing? What can you tell me about them? And in Brendan's, hey, he can say, Carlton was wearing a pink shirt, and Cameron was wearing a green shirt.
Yep.
Right? I think that could be, like, that is true. Like, I wore a pink shirt the last episode we did.
Right.
And it could be Brendan just like, I don't remember exactly what shirt. Like, that is a true statement. Like, I have worn a pink shirt. If he forgets about the fact that I'm not currently wearing a pink shirt, perhaps is semantics again. But I think that might be better than... I don't know.
I think we solved it. Brendan was the killer. He pulled the brakes.
he's the star of the show and wants he wants more screen time. I'm not sure. I'm just not sure about... Like, I have a really hard time with subjectivity
Right.
being placed above objectivity. Like subjectivity has a place. There is an importance to subjectivity, but to your point before, like modernity and this postmodern idea that your truth is all that matters is kind of rubbish, and it is detrimental to living life. Even this Buddhist example talks about there is like the higher truth, and that truth is, even if it's not spelled out as this is the good stuff, like that's the truth that we all want to have. Like we all want that truth. We don't want to have some truth where We have 8 people laying claim to my car. I'm like, no, I want the real truth where it's my car. I don't want you to be like, I have a claim for that too. It's kind of our car. It's not our car. This is
Yeah, you
not
go
our
down,
car.
there's some guy from CBA in the driver's seat. It's my car, dude. What are you doing?
So it's ours.
I'm going to go to 7-Eleven.
Yeah, so I'm not sure. I think, to me anyway, just to define terms quickly, objective truth can be summarized as what is,
Yeah, that's right.
right? It's about the object. And objectively, things are true even if you don't know, like, or believe the statement. So
Yeah,
if it
that's
is
the case.
raining outside this magnificently lit cave, right? And we don't know it's raining, it's still objectively raining.
Yes.
If we don't believe it's raining, it's still raining.
Yeah, that's right.
And if we don't like the fact that it's raining, it's still raining.
Yeah, that's
So
right.
that's how you know something is true.
Yeah.
Even if you don't know, like, or believe it. It is still happening.
Yeah.
And then subjectively, you would say, well, it's not raining here. It's outside the cave is raining, but it's not raining in here. So it's a true thing to say, right here in this building, it's not raining. If I can't see it, I can't tell otherwise, because we're so deep in the cave
Yeah.
that we can't hear it. We have no knowledge of it. To us, it may as well not be raining. And this kind of links into my general idea that, to your point about the reality and the atoms and the light fractions, I'm like, there is a sense that reality exists through the human experience. There is no reality that exists, or no reality that exists that's worthwhile commenting on, that is not experienced by a human.
Well, isn't that's what I thought in my mind would have been the balance that Brendan was talking about when he read out the ultimate truth and the conventional, and then there's a truth that sort of lives in between there. That's kind of like experience. That's what it gave to me when it was first mentioned. Like you're using conventional truth and your personal truth, and there is an objective truth, and you kind of live in between them.
You did, like, yeah. No one is. I don't think anyone's making the argument that you can ever live 100% on that straight objective, good stuff, because there is a lot of subjectivity that goes into life and experiences and biases and prejudices. But I think the acknowledgement that there is a truth, things did happen, and they happened a certain way. Nowadays, with like this camera, like you can clearly see, I am on the left, and Cameron is on the right. That's objectively a true statement of where we're sitting and positioned right now. And you and I
To us. Because the person sitting over there, I'm on the left and you're on the right.
That's just
if
how
you're
they're
watching the
looking at
video.
us. But they know.
That's actually not a bad example of two things being true at the same time. I'm on the
potentially,
left.
but if I look at but if I'm if I'm driving, right?
Yeah.
I'm driving down the road and I see someone. Oh, actually, maybe that might be a good point.
Because I'm on the left side and they're on the right side. But to me, they're on the left side and I'm on the right side.
Like polar north here. This has turned out to be a
So
disaster.
I think Brendan here was saying,
episode.
and then memory is a good example. And you chimed on it when I was trying to think of example. I use a subjective thing, like something can be true for me and true for you at the same time, being the exact opposite. Like even I could be like, yesterday was a bad day.
For
And you
you.
could say yesterday, you could say yesterday was a good day.
Yeah,
and
right.
they're both
That's a good
true.
example.
But like,
Yeah, true for different
we could have been in the
reasons.
exact same room the entire day, and one of us had a good
It's
day, one had a bad
unlikely.
day. Yeah,
I've never seen you have a bad day around me. You dirty dog.
Yeah,
But
well,
that's a very good
it's
point.
not
That's a
congruent.
very good point. Yeah,
It's not a sound argument. Yeah,
That's a very good point. That's a
Yeah.
very good point. And I see what you're saying. I think though, this is such a nerdy thing, I reckon. But I was like hanging paintings on the wall. I'm like,
Yeah.
all right, which one goes on the left and which one goes on the right? And my wife was like, oh, you put this one on the left. And I'm like, oh, but when we look at it, it's on the right. And she's like, just put it on the left from that perspective. And I was like,
Right,
oh, okay,
okay.
fair enough. Like, I guess that's makes sense. Like if you're looking at a wall or you're looking at us potentially, I'm on the left of Cameron, even if you're looking at me on the right. There should be
Right,
like a
yeah.
knowledge of like, oh, it's actually inverted because of the way the camera is set up. I guess.
Yes.
Is maybe.
yeah, I know what you mean. But there is a statement like if you were sitting, if I was a
kinda
king,
get it,
and I was
yeah.
like my right hand man, it's clearly the person on the right of the king. It's not the person on the
Sure,
right of the
yeah.
audience looking at the king. But yeah.
Right, okay. But what if I said to you, you know that famous thing where it's, I'll draw it actually, because it might be easier. But if I drew like and I held that up like this, and I said like, what is this number?
Yeah, right.
Right? And
Yeah.
you'd be like, oh, that's a 6.
Yeah,
But if I like just turn it around, it's a 9.
It's an upside down 6. Yeah, it's a 9.
Kind of, that's terrible.
Yeah,
That's
it could
not good
be
at all.
could be a flag.
Could be anything, right? But I'm saying like there is the objective truth is I drew a 6, I suppose. Do you know what I mean? Like there is like the point that I drew it a certain way indicates like it's actually a 6.
Yeah.
Even if your perception of it is wrong or like opposite, that you might intuit initially that it's a 9, it is actually a 6. Does that make sense?
How the hell do I know it's a 6 though?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm
Without
not
being
100%
inside
sure.
your brain. Yeah.
It's not to be inside my brain, I suppose. It's more of a like if you're on this side looking at it, it looks like a 9.
Right.
But if you're on this side, where
If
I
you
am,
drew it as a 6.
yeah. So if you're like on the other side, so like from here and from here, here's my notes. Have a good look at that.
Yeah. Zoom in.
You see like different.
Yeah.
The reality is morphed, but the objective reality is like I drew a 6, even if your interpretation subjectively is a 9 because it appears to be a 9 at first glance. It's actually a 6, and with some deduction, you could infer rightly like, oh well, if the person who wrote that is here, that would be a 6.
Yeah.
Therefore, it's a 6, right?
Regardless
But
of
initially, this is such a
perspective.
long way of saying like I'm on the left-hand side of you. It's just,
I'm on the
it's
left.
crazy. It's crazy. That's how I would describe it. Like it's a bit convoluted. It's a little bit. I grant that that's there is an element of you can get really deep into the weeds when talking
You
about
can
truth.
get full on into
But there is a point where it becomes reductionist
Yeah.
because at some point when we start talking about the atoms on the cup and that you can't see the light prisms, like, well, who cares? Like, in the sense that the reality experience is human.
Yeah.
And if you can't experience it as human, it may as well not exist. And that is my philosophy of life as a sort of romantic humanist. I'm like, well, I don't care about
there's stuff that isn't a human
that
experience.
isn't human stuff. It doesn't, because it can't interact with me if it's outside my sphere of influence. What was the point of?
Yeah, and the human experience is so grand.
And
anyway.
the human,
There's a lot to like
there is a lot of
regardless.
very fun stuff going on.
Yeah,
I know
it's
what
not.
you're saying
With that.
it's not as if it's
interesting.
bad to do sciencey and learn about the prisms of light. But if you can't experience it for 99.9% of your life, and then you're trying to be like, aha, I've debunked your truth because you can't see the. Like, listen, mate, like you haven't debunked anything. You're just coming in here with some random stuff. Like that is still true.
Yeah.
Like it is still true that these cups, handmade cups, we got some TBC cups coming.
Oh, do we?
We do, yeah. Some mugs. Like this mug was made out of clay, actually, and painted, obviously, in a beautiful French Revolution colors. Not really sure why. I just like the deep blue. It's good stuff. But the point is, they were made of clay, but this is a mug. Right?
Yeah.
It is a mug. Even though, like, yeah, it's also clay. It's also hardened by fire. It's also paint and other molecules and atoms. But it is a mug. It's made of molecules and clay. It gets back to that stupid thesis thing. But to me, the essence of what this is a mug. It doesn't matter what it's made out of. It could be plastic. It's still a mug. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like the components of the thing are not important. It is the thing that is important.
I think this is where I start thinking like it starts getting into like the philosophy of logic and then the philosophy of like language and like how much of a statement needs to be fleshed out to make it actually true. Like so the statement that is pottery, that is ceramics, that is a cup, that is clay are all vaguely true.
They're all true. That's objectively, they're all true. Right? They're all
Yeah.
true statements, and they can all exist together. They can all be true together, which is why it's not a two truth thing. It's like this is the one truth. All of them are true.
But we're like conflated. Yeah, that's right. They're all true. So it's more of a descriptive thing. You're just giving descriptions about the same thing.
Well,
it's not even really like
truth is what is underline what is. That's truth. Also God. But
what is this
right?
cup is God.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
that is what
I
truth
do.
is. Like we're talking about like what is truth. Take out truth. What is? That is what we're talking about. How do we know that?
That's right. I don't know.
That's what we know.
But I had something really interesting to say that I fully just flew out of my brain. But like I could get really nerdy, not nerdy, but really like annoying, like that philosopher at the pub who's just like annoying as where you could totally go down the rabbit hole and be like, well, there is no cup. It's just like a descriptive word about a bunch of stuff together that you use to like.
So some Diogenes crap about like a what was that? There's like a lecture being given about what is man?
Yeah.
Oh, it's a bipedal like mammal or something, or a hairless and then someone plucks a chicken and it's like, behold.
Yeah, you can mess around. That's what I mean. It's the language
Man.
stuff. Well, so like you were saying before, I was thinking when this bloke's in a room and she says the statement, "It is raining." Now, to like look into that as a true statement in general, it's raining. It's such a small, descriptionless utterance that like to say it is raining is actually always true because it's raining somewhere at some point at any given time.
That's a very good point.
Do you know what I mean? Like this is
Very
then
good
you start to delve into like what are you actually saying? You'd have to be like, it is raining outside this room at this exact time in my experience. You know what I mean? And then when you talk about truth, you're talking about how much stuff you're leaving out of the statement versus what are you actually saying.
This is a language thing though.
It's a logic
and there
language
is an
nonsense.
inference that when someone says it's raining, they don't mean in Taiwan.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
That's right.
They're like the presupposition of speech of the relationship we have. Like if I rang you up and said, "Oi, mate, people are being stabbed to death," and you're like, "Oh crap!" Like in Gaza, you're like,
That'd be the shittest
like,
phone call.
Why are you getting?
Like,
why are you doing this?
mate?
Like you're a piece of crap. Like why would you call me with an urgency in your voice about something that's happening so far away?
Yeah.
Because the assumption is when I call you with that initial statement is that it's happening here.
But isn't that the convention? The convention is humans don't call each other and say random true statements like a robot. So that doesn't work in life to make anything meaningful. You can't do that and like have a conversation. So there's like a background presupposition in the use of language that you just don't do that. But that would be objectively true. Like someone somewhere's probably getting
Someone's
stabbed
been
at some
murdered.
point.
You're like,
Yeah.
yes, that's terrible to bring up or to think about, but that is true.
You are dying slowly right now.
Yeah.
Have a nice night.
Yeah, okay.
Thanks for that.
I'm not sure. Maybe truth is one of those ones where it requires a more focused look. But I think we can run over the last two quickly to give a bit of a rounded out without going into presuppositions of language and how humans interact with one another. Because it is like it just becomes semantics, and it could be potentially tiresome to be like, okay, well, in this situation, if we break down language, we can completely say, that's terribly worded. We can say that was really poorly explained. Well, that was poorly explained. That was poor.
Yeah.
Like what you're trying to convey actually isn't very good. But because we're all human and we have shared cultural identities and we understand vaguely what we're talking about, it makes sense to us in a way in which we can grapple with the objective truth that you're trying to talk about.
That's right, yeah.
Because if you take away, and this is, I think, my issue with the language stuff, there is so much of it is pre-assumed, and you have to, at a certain point, or it does become kind of a tiresome, okay, well then literally we can do this all day where everything you say can mean nothing.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
everything, depending on how annoying I want to be and how many times I say, really, why is that? Oh, but what is this?
Yeah.
Because there is a point where you're like, well, hang on, we have to
philosopher at the
have some base from which to operate. Otherwise, I feel like it's very difficult to have any meaningful conversation if we are spending the entire conversation saying, but what actually if the light fragment was here and this isn't actually?
Yeah.
There has to be, and like I said, my parameters are fairly straightforward in that it's the human experience is what we're talking about. The objective reality is what happened. It is what it is. And then the subjective is then about me. It's about you. It's about the subject, that you're feeling towards the thing. And that can be anything. And you can't be wrong in how you feel. That's an opinion. It can change, and it should change as you learn more about the objective reality of your experience. But at any given time, the majority of your feelings and thoughts are subjective. It's how you feel about X at the time. An opinion is what you believe to be true at that moment. And it changes when you receive new information or you see new things and you change your mind to get onto the latest update of truth that you can download.
That's right.
Into your brain.
But do you think we can, like, even remotely, like, fully obtain the objective stuff, or is it kind of just like a goal you can't even really get to? Because I agree, I think there is an objective truth. It's just I don't think it's like touchable.
No, I think you can. I think is it attainable? Yes, but it would be like any enlightenment or any endeavor worth anything, it would be a difficult path to achieve that enlightenment, that goal of knowing or being, or operating in the sort of true space. But yeah, I think it's certainly achievable. I think it's a very high bar. Don't get me wrong. I don't think if you shut your eyes and try for 5 minutes, you can get there. I think it's one of those things that would take a lifetime of working toward the goal of being
and testing stuff. You got to test it a little bit too, like your ideas or.
Well, you could be objectively wrong.
Yeah, you could,
so that's fine.
You could be wrong, but sometimes you don't know you're wrong until you go out there, you test it amongst a group of people, and then all of a sudden, like, they all come back saying like that was no, it's incorrect. Like, stop it.
Pretty straightforward.
That's a bit like language. Like, I could just be talking nonsense. It doesn't make sense to a whole group of people. Then I'm like in the wrong.
Well, yeah, I mean,
I'm going to drink from my ceramic cup machine. Like, they'd be like, listen, stop that, mate.
Okay. So objective, pretty simple. It's about the object. It is, regardless of how you think, feel, know, believe, that is what it is. Subjective is about you. It's how you feel. Can't be wrong. And that's sort of like your opinion at the time. And it should hopefully change as you get more information.
Don't you think they're like melding a bit though? Like, this is like one of the big things these days.
I'm getting to the next one. The political truth.
Yeah, everything's just whatevs now. Whatever you feel like.
I don't like that though. I don't like that at all. I think it's a cheap way of living life. Yeah. If it's just whatever. I don't like this nihilism that's kind of creeping in.
No, nihilism's not the best.
Good. It's not good.
Everyone goes through a bit of like, yay for the nihilism when you're like a teenager and you're like, everything's nothing, it's all nonsense. Yeah.
I suppose.
So I think I agree with you. I believe there's objective truth. I just don't know, like, I feel like they're probably being indoctrinated by philosophy of the university and stuff, but I feel like it's almost like pretty much impossible to get to. It's really, really, really difficult. And sometimes like you think you're fully on it. And then later on you're like, what an absolute moron. Like even just like, outside that's... this is happening. Something's occurring. Like even that, I've got all these presupposition biases on like that whole sentence, and then I go into it and I use my own experiences and knowledge and ideas that I've pre-constructed to then approach something and interact with it. It's already like pretty much tainted by my whole like belief system. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And even the fact no one really fully knows what's fully occurring. Like you can. It's hard. It's not useful to think that way. To get into it because
it's a defeatist way of looking at it.
Yeah,
if we're in the cave, you and I, and we're trying to get out of the cave, which is sort of our whole thing, and we see up above us light that is not from the fire, that is coming from outside the cave, and we climb towards it, and we think we're about to get there, and we're becoming more enlightened, and we're becoming closer to the truth, to the objective truth, and then we realize that it's actually bouncing off this other rock.
Great example.
And the real light is actually way further up.
Yeah.
I don't think that's disparaging. It's like,
no.
In the journey of life, there's ups and downs, and there's, you make progress. Sometimes you go a little bit further backwards, but it's an experience that you need to continue going forward.
You tested it.
Right. Yeah.
But you've tested it with your knowledge of your cave life.
But you're getting better. If you're from your example, like it's not as if you're stagnant. You are growing in your knowledge and appreciation. And I think it's important to have a good understanding of the objective and the subjective to then be able to dissect the political truth. And I don't like it very much.
I don't really like that idea.
But the idea of political truth is it's not necessarily objectively or subjectively true, but there's an essence of truth in there somewhere. If Donald Trump says, we're going to build a wall to keep the Mexicans out or something like that, it doesn't need to be literally true that he's building a wall to keep Mexicans out or that he's building a wall at all. What he's actually saying is, I want to stop like the mass influx of illegal immigration. That's actually what he's talking about, even though he's saying things that have a literal, objective meaning, but they don't necessarily need to be true for his statement to be true.
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
That's what political truth is.
And then someone who's supporting that goes, I agree with that specific sentiment for me, but then there could be someone else who goes, I don't believe in that specific sentiment for me, and this is my situation and what I'd like to purport to the world, etc.
Yeah. But I suppose that's.
But you're saying that it's not even really true that he is even really caring about the wall. That's also.
I'm saying the wall is completely redundant.
Yeah, right.
But his statement is how we would say objectively, it's false. He didn't build a wall. Mexico didn't pay for it. It's not to keep out Mexican people exclusively. But the essence of what he was trying to convey in that speech was, I'm going to stop illegal immigration, which I think it was down. I don't know the numbers or anything, but like I think his plan was to do X, and there was some degree of success in that application, wherein migration across southern border was limited during his time in office because of the policies he enacted. Even if what he said wasn't objectively true, it's not even subjectively true, because it's not. There's nothing to do with walls or Mexicans. It's mostly like it's further south. I think is the caravans, whatever. This is a bit off on a tangent. The point is though, it doesn't have to be objectively true for it to be politically true.
Yeah, okay.
Because there's an essence to, like, you and I can like read between the lines and go, oh, like I know what the message is supposed to be. If Joe Biden says we're going to forgive student debt, like that's not an objective statement. You can't forgive a debt. All you can do is transfer it onto other people. Right? Like if the government pays for something, it's not like yay for you. You're just paying more in taxes now to pay that thing down. Like it's not free because the government pays for it, I suppose.
Yeah, that's what you're
Even
saying.
though it might appear to be that way, like the objective reality is that's not happening. Student loan debt forgiveness is not a real. You can't if you just like, oh, just forgive all the debt in the world. Like that's not how it works. Even if you did take away all those debt and you made it the government debt, and you're like, oh great, now we need to,
Well, I think my sentiment is, I know what you're saying. I don't like that truth because it seems like just a bunch of whatever. There's like no real truth in any of that. If nothing means nothing, it's just like it's an essence of like maybe that's what I'm getting from it. And that political truth,
but that's essentially what political truth I believe is. Yeah, it's like I can say things meaning broadly this, even if the analogy I give is completely rubbish, doesn't never going to be a thing,
or even it doesn't actually even align with anything I'm actually standing for or doing. Do you know what I mean? Like, so if I'm a voter and I watch some stuff and I go, oh yeah, that's what I'm all about, but it actually, if you like logic it out, actually fully doesn't align with anything that I personally believe. You can have that too. People do that all the time.
Yeah, I think that's I think the point is it's not a truth that one should strive for.
No, it's a garbage truth.
It's not good.
No one's looking at politicians for the truth.
Well, I think the striving of truth should be reserved for objective truth only.
Yeah.
And the subjective truth should be inferred by the objective truth, even though, as you pointed out, we can't know objective truth 100%. I don't think it's inevitable or it's impossible. I think that you gain more truth if you seek it out, you will find it.
Right.
Like if you are trying to learn things, you will learn things. If you sit on the couch and scroll Instagram Reels, that's what you'll do. You will find that. You will do that.
Good stuff. Yeah.
And your ratio between objective reality and subjective reality will be warped compared to someone who is focused on trying to find out the truth.
But nowadays, it seems to me that it's hard to find. It's actually quite difficult in some respects for certain people in certain places. It's actually like a lot of just subjective crap going around everywhere. It's really, really difficult to get to the actual crux of a lot of stuff, which is sad, I think. And I think like because people benefit off like telling you stuff that isn't true. So it works incorrectly. So I think we've like almost come to the time. We've covered a fair bit of it.
Yeah.
Old mate Brendos has got a thing in there, which I think is a great thing. I might, We're just going to do a shout out for the subscribers we've got so far. Thank you very much for sticking to us and then like watching and liking and subscribing and making all the comments. We do read them.
It's been very cool.
We're very appreciative.
Very gratifying for us who started this a couple months ago. Just an idea.
We're just talking.
Very enjoyable for us.
Yeah.
And look, this has been Two Blokes in a Cave. Thank you for making us part of your day.
Just because this is always delayed, we're recording this and won't get uploaded for later. So we've got about 50 now. but
50
subscribers. Yeah, so that's pretty good, and I really
At
do
the time of
appreciate it.
recording,
Yeah, like I
on
just
the
also saying
26th of September.
thanks for the trying times and some technical learning experiences. Yeah, stay tuned for all the better or worse. All the lights going off.
It's getting
and us
better.
doing
I
that.
mean, like, there's no more waving like
Cameras
hooligans.
turning on and off.
It's definitely it's a pretty nifty little production we've got going here. So
Exactly.
$2 in a cave. We're trying to get out of the cave. We'll see you next time. Thanks very
Bye.
much.